Today is my wedding day. The ceremony doesn't start for another 90 minutes, but I'm already dressed and ready, and honestly, I can barely believe this moment has finally arrived. My outfit is everything I ever dreamed of: an ivory silk gown with a full-length skirt, a fitted bodice, and soft puffed sleeves. The moment I saw it in the shop, I knew it was the one. Slipping into it makes me feel like a fairy tale princess stepping into a new chapter of life. Underneath, I'm wearing soft, elegant undergarments and delicate stockings, details that make me feel graceful and complete. My shoes are modest but beautiful, with just the right heel to keep me comfortable through what's bound to be a long, emotional day. I sit back in the chair and trace a small scar on my neck, a reminder of how far I've come in the past 2 years. It's strange to think that once, I couldn't have imagined this life for myself. Now, I wear a small collar around my neck, a simple symbol of the trust and love that binds me to Miss Rachel, the woman who changed everything for me. When she first told me we were going to be married and that I would be the one walking down the aisle in a gown, I was overwhelmed. It was a lot to process. But over time, I came to understand the depth of what that promise meant: devotion, trust, and a shared future built on honesty and love. It's a bittersweet moment that my parents won't be attending. They couldn't accept the life I've chosen. But I've made peace with that. Today isn't about them. It's about showing the world the commitment I've made to the woman who has guided and supported me. And nothing is going to ruin that. 2 years ago, I was just another student. I was 18, alone in a new city, living in a small apartment my parents had bought for me while I attended university. I didn't have many friends yet, and on most nights, the silence of that apartment was my only company. But I had a secret, one I'd carried with me for years. I had always felt drawn to femininity. I admired the way my sisters dressed, the confidence they had, the freedom they seemed to feel when they were expressing themselves. But I was too scared to share that part of myself with anyone. That all changed one quiet Friday night. Out of boredom, I installed an internet connection and went online for the first time. What started as simple curiosity quickly became something more. I stumbled into chat rooms, places where people shared their thoughts, fantasies, and experiences without judgment. I created a profile, nervously, awkwardly, and found myself talking to people who understood. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone in what I felt. And slowly, I started to explore that hidden side of myself more openly. The conversations that followed opened doors I never expected. They taught me about identity, expression, and the freedom of living authentically. And eventually, those conversations led me to Miss Rachel, a strong, confident woman who saw something in me that I hadn't yet dared to embrace. From there, everything changed. Rachel challenged me to grow, to explore, and to let go of the shame I'd carried for so long. She encouraged me to live in a way that felt true, not to anyone else's expectations, but to my own. It wasn't always easy. There were times when the journey was uncomfortable, moments of doubt, vulnerability, and fear. But every step brought me closer to the person I was always meant to be. And now, as I stand on the edge of a new life, I feel nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the courage it took to embrace who I am. Gratitude for the love and patience that brought me here. Gratitude for the woman waiting for me at the end of the aisle, the one who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. Today, I'm not just getting married. I'm celebrating a transformation, not of body, but of spirit. A journey from fear to freedom. From hiding to honesty. From isolation to love. And as I take a deep breath and prepare to walk down that aisle, I know that whatever the future holds, I will walk into it with my head held high as the truest version of myself. "Yes, sir," I typed nervously. "Tell me about yourself," came the reply. It was the smallest invitation, but it was all I needed. For the next half hour, I found myself pouring my heart out to Hercules, a stranger on the other side of the screen who somehow made me feel seen for the very first time. I told him about my curiosity, my secret dreams, and the parts of myself I had always kept hidden. It didn't even occur to me until later that I knew almost nothing about him. But in that moment, it didn't matter. I was overwhelmed with relief just to be able to share my inner thoughts without fear of judgment. The conversation shifted. Hercules began asking questions about how I saw myself, what drew me to femininity, and how I imagined expressing that side of me. It felt strangely therapeutic, like talking to someone who could understand the things I had never said out loud. Then he asked if I wanted guidance, if I wanted him to help me explore these feelings in a structured way. My heart raced. It was exactly what I'd been longing for without even realizing it, someone to show me how to embrace the side of myself I'd been hiding. I agreed. What followed was an unusual, but deeply revealing experience. Hercules asked me to imagine myself presenting differently, to picture myself dressed the way I'd always dreamed, walking with confidence, acting with grace. He challenged me to describe the scene out loud in the chat, to claim it publicly. My cheeks flushed as I typed, but it was liberating in a way I hadn't expected. Other users chimed in with their thoughts, some supportive, some teasing, but for once, I didn't care. This wasn't about them. It was about me taking my first steps toward honesty. As the conversation continued, Hercules pushed me further, not with anything physical, but with prompts that made me question who I was and what I wanted. He guided me through visualizations, asked me to reflect on moments that made me feel most like myself, and gently encouraged me to embrace the idea that my identity was something to be proud of rather than ashamed of. The hours slipped by. I was completely immersed, not in fantasy, but in the possibility of transformation. I felt seen, guided, and oddly empowered. By the time our conversation ended, I realized something profound. I wasn't just talking to someone online. I was taking my first real steps toward the life I had always wanted. "I'm leaving now," Hercules typed. "Hope you all enjoyed the show." I froze. My hands trembled as I typed back, "Will I see you again?" Then, for the first time, I heard his real voice, cold, detached, and mocking. "See me again? You actually believed I wanted anything more from you? This was just a one-time thing. There are thousands like you, desperate for attention, every time I log on." The chat exploded with laughter. My heart sank. I felt used, foolish, and humiliated, like I had poured every part of myself into a moment that meant nothing to him. But how could I complain? I had asked for this experience, and now I was living the painful reality of it. I swallowed hard and, despite my embarrassment, typed a final message. I hope my effort was satisfactory. Then I logged off, with the echo of their laughter still ringing in my ears. The next day, I avoided my computer. I tried to distract myself, cooking, running errands, pretending yesterday had never happened. But late in the afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I sat down and opened my laptop, intending only to check the news. That's when I saw it, a small envelope icon blinking in the corner of the screen. I clicked it. Somehow, an email account had been created when I joined the chat site. And inside that inbox, there were 2 messages. The first was a generic welcome email. The second changed everything. It was from someone calling herself Mistress Rachel. The subject line was simple: "You. I watched you last night," the message began. "It was clear you're inexperienced, but I was impressed by your willingness to follow instructions and your respectful attitude, even after being mistreated. Most people would have lashed out or left. You didn't, and that shows something rare. I would like to speak with you if you're open to it. I understand you might be hesitant after what happened, but I'll be online tonight at 17:30 UK time. It would please me if you joined." My heart skipped a beat. A real person, someone who seemed genuinely interested, wanted to talk to me. I glanced at the clock. 5:23 p.m. I had 7 minutes. Panic and excitement hit me all at once. I quickly pulled the curtain shut, made sure the doors were locked, and tried to calm my racing thoughts. When I logged back into the chat room, the message appeared instantly. "Welcome. I'm glad you came." And just like that, a new chapter of my life had begun, one built not on humiliation or mockery, but on the possibility of trust, guidance, and something far deeper than I had expected. "Thank you, Miss Rachel, and thank you for your email," I typed nervously. "Welcome, dear," she replied. "But please, just call me Miss Rachel. Your attitude last night fascinated me. I see a lot of potential in you, and I wanted a chance to talk." And so we talked. For nearly 3 hours, we exchanged messages, not about fantasies or commands, but about me. She asked about my background, my fears, my hidden desires, my hopes and dreams. At first, I clung to the half-truths I'd written in my profile the night before. But the longer we spoke, the more she gently guided me toward honesty, and the more I found myself revealing things I'd never said out loud. I told her about the recurring dreams where I was always the one submitting, about how those daydreams shaped my self-image. I confessed that in those dreams my name was always Sophie. Miss Rachel smiled, at least I imagined she did, and said I could keep that name. It felt strangely real, as if she had granted me permission to become the person I'd always wanted to be. Miss Rachel shared stories of how she'd mentored others in the past, people like me who had come to her unsure, conflicted, and afraid. Her tales were intense, and though some of them were difficult to hear, they stirred something deep inside me. More than ever, I knew that this was the path I wanted to follow. But then, as the conversation was about to end, she said something that took me completely by surprise. "I have to go," she typed. "When will we speak again?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Never," came the reply. "At least, not unless you learn to be honest with me." I stared at the screen in confusion. "What do you mean?" "Well, for a start, that photo on your profile isn't really you, is it?" Even though she was miles away, I turned crimson. "No, it isn't." "I'm so sorry, Mississippi." "You will be," she replied calmly. "Understand this. Honesty and obedience are the foundations of any real transformation. If you truly want this, it will require commitment and sacrifice. This isn't a game for weekends. It's a way of living. I'll be here again in 48 hours. If you still want to continue, you'll have some tasks to complete before then. Anything, Mississippi. I don't want to disappoint you." "Good. Then listen carefully," she said. "First, update your profile with the truth, including a real photo. Second, from now on, you will present yourself properly whenever we speak. That means investing in a wardrobe that reflects the person you say you want to become, clothing, accessories, makeup, everything. And finally, I want you to have a webcam and microphone. If we're going to work together, I need to see and hear you. I don't waste my time with empty words." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. This was more than I'd ever imagined. The thought of creating a whole wardrobe and showing myself to someone terrified me, yet it thrilled me too. Part of me wanted to slam the laptop shut and walk away. Another part of me knew I never could. And after a lifetime of hiding, I gave the only answer that felt right. "Yes, Miss Rachel," I typed. "I'll do everything you ask." "I understand perfectly, ma'am." "I'll be here in 2 days," I replied. Looking back now, I'm amazed I never questioned her or asked for more time before taking such a huge step. But at the time, the thought of disappointing Miss Rachel again was unbearable. In just a few conversations, I had already accepted her as someone whose approval mattered more than anything else, maybe even more than my own. And deep down, I knew I wanted to prove myself worthy of that approval. The next morning, I skipped college and drove nearly 80 miles to a larger town. Buying the tech equipment was easy. A quick stop at the electronics store and I was done. But buying clothes, that was a completely different story. Just walking into a women's clothing shop was terrifying. Twice, I chickened out and left before even speaking to a sales assistant. Once, an older woman pointed at me and whispered something cruel under her breath. But I pressed on, determined not to fail Miss Rachel. Eventually, I managed to buy a few items. And when the embarrassment became too much, I drove into London, where I could blend into the crowd. It was still awkward, but at least there I wasn't the only man shopping for women's clothes. I ended the day with a few dresses, skirts, and accessories, enough to get started. The one thing I hadn't been able to buy was shoes. That problem solved itself when I visited a specialty boutique near King's Cross. Once I got over the shock of seeing other people like me shopping confidently, I relaxed and even enjoyed the experience. I left with 2 pairs, a sleek 4-inch pair of heels and a stylish pair of ankle boots. By the time I got home, it was nearly midnight. I was exhausted and planned to rest for just a few minutes before trying on my new purchases. The next thing I knew, sunlight was streaming through the window. I had slept straight through until 10 a.m. Determined to make the most of the day, I decided to spend it preparing for my next meeting with Miss Rachel. I called my college to say I'd be taking another day off, and then treated myself to a long, relaxing bath with scented oils. While I was at it, I shaved my body, something I'd never done before. The smoothness of my skin was startling and strangely liberating. Then came the makeup. My first few attempts were a disaster. Too much blush, too much mascara, I looked like a clown. But after half an hour of experimenting, I had something passable. It was still dramatic, but I could recognize myself, or rather, the version of myself I wanted to become.